Okay, I think 2 p.m. now starts. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are joining us from today. Welcome to session 5 of the Asia Pacific Transport Forum, Quality Transport Infrastructure Investments. I'm Hiro Yamaguchi, Director for the Transport and Communications Division of ADB's Southeast Asia Department. I'm honored to moderate this session. As the chart shows, countries across the region have a large deficit in terms of transport infrastructure and activity and must continue to invest to expand their transport systems. Together with this quantity, quality should be ensured. How these assets using debt could lead to a high quality growth, like improving resilience, urgently tackling road safety, decarbonizing the sector, etc. We'll discuss how quality transport infrastructure and services will be essential to stimulate post-COVID-19 economic recovery and support efforts by countries to achieve sustainable development goals. I now have the pleasure of introducing our speakers. Our first panelist is Kureo Kawawaki. Kureo heads the Office of Public-Private Partnership at ADB, which leads ADB's efforts at finding opportunities for cooperation in development between the public sector and private interests, and is concurrently the senior advisor for the Central and West Asia Department of ADB. Our second panelist is Asad Feinov. Asad is manager for Azerbaijan Railways Cross Joint Stock Company. The next panelist is Valery Partia. Valery is integration manager at Sustainable Infrastructure Foundation. He coordinates the implementation of SOURCE, the multilateral platform for sustainable infrastructure. Also on the panel is Patrick Malejak, the Secretary General of PIAC, the World Roads Association. Patrick's mission is to provide support to road administrations and professionals across the globe. Our fifth panelist is Chaudhary Rudacharan Mohanty. Mohanty is the Environment Program Coordinator at United Nations Center for Regional Development. A warm welcome panelists. Each speaker will make a brief presentation, and this will then be followed by a panel discussion and the question and answer session. You can participate, audience, you can participate in the discussion by sharing your questions or comments using the Zoom Q&A function on your device. Okay, thank you very much. Now, let's move on the presentation, starting with Kureo. A keynote presentation on this session on enabling quality transport infrastructure investments. Kureo, please.
Thank you, Hiro. I just went to Clark and saw your project on the Philippine rails. It almost made me cry, with all the progress that's been made and how much difference it's going to make to the lives of the people. So I'm Cleo Kawawaki, head of the Office of Public-Private Partnership at ADB. It is a great pleasure to join you for the Transport Forum 2022, especially for the topic of enabling quality transport infrastructure. My presentation will cover the challenges and status associated with transport infrastructure in Asia Pacific, discuss the changing nature of ADB support for transport sector, and conclude by highlighting the importance of ensuring sustainable quality transport infrastructure investments to support recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. As economies across Asia and Pacific develop, they have built transport infrastructure that allows for the movement of both people and goods. However, the transport sector investment needs are still large, estimated by ADB to be around 8.4 trillion between 2016 and 2030. Well, pre-COVID-19, the rates of infrastructure investment was way below what was needed to keep pace with achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Well, with the scarce public resources, ADB's development member countries have become even more constrained in fulfilling their infrastructure investment commitments. To increased infrastructure spending will help stimulate post-COVID-19 economic recovery in some countries, while other countries may not be able to provide enough physical support in the short term due to their difficult financial positions, leading to reduced infrastructure investment or prioritizing the spending of, well, even more immediate needs. So, next page. Looking at the data, okay, the spider web is really interesting. On the status of the transport infrastructure in the Asia and Pacific is really underserved with transport infrastructure and transport activity. Transport infrastructure in the region is lower than expected and shows that there is still need to the capacity of transport infrastructure networks. Asia Pacific road infrastructure accounts for about 30% of the global total for roads and 34% for rail infrastructure. Both are significantly below the 58% of global population and 49% of global GDP for the region. However, the region performs better on some transport infrastructure indicators, such as high-speed rail and urban metros, with 76% and 59% respectively. The regional transport across access, be this rural, urban, or freight transport, falls short of global comparisons. 560 million people are still without rural access. Much work is still required to connect rural areas of the country, economies, and bridge the economic divide. Okay. So the figures here shows that transport needs by economy type. Using road length as indicator, low and lower middle income economies in Asia and Pacific have some of the lowest road length per capita in the world. Even the high income countries in the region have per capita road length below those both of the Americas and Europe. This clearly shows the infrastructure deficit in the region and that this is more marked in the lower income countries. Considerable investment in both transport infrastructure and transport operational efficiencies are required to support the development and provide access for all. Okay, next slide. Okay, 76% of global deaths are attributed to PM 2.5 in the region, and very high contribution by transport to the air quality in Asian cities. The region transport sector accounts for 31% of global transport CO2 emissions. With rapid motorization, the share will increase unless widespread decarbonization measures are introduced. ADB is committed to support this transformation, is aligning its support to the principles of the Paris Agreement. In fact, by July 2023, all of our sovereign operations will be Paris aligned. So the road safety in the region is also poor, with 60% of global road crash fatalities recorded in Asia and Pacific, costing 6.4% of the region's GDP. Urgent action is required to address the scale of the economic loss and social impact of road fatalities and serious injuries. Ensuing comprehensive transport infrastructure is still a key requirement in many countries in the region and will remain a driving force in transport sector policy and investments. Transport systems requirements are becoming broader in nature through the desire to promote the advantages of multimodal transport systems and addressing negative externalities. Okay, so looking forward, There's a shift in ADB transport sector support towards broader policy and programmatic approach for integrated, multi-sectoral, cross-cutting transport system and services. The shift to programmatic approach lets us support our clients to address the sector's challenges by delivering quality transport infrastructure, improve operational efficiencies, and minimize externalities. And in doing so, at a scale that will have a meaningful impact towards achieving the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. The transport sector has a large role for private sector finance and operations as well. ADB will support its developing member countries to prepare projects that will attract private finance through creating enabling environment, capacity development for value for money assessment projects, selection, structuring to implementation, and even monitoring, strengthening project preparation, transaction advisory services, and public sector financing, for example, viability gap funding and guarantees, and private sector financing. ADB will support game-changing mega project infrastructure to deliver high-quality demonstration projects such as the urban mass transit, long-distance rail, as well as ports and airports to regional connectivity, just like the one that I visited in Clark this week. It's beautiful. I can't wait to ride on it. Besides, for ADB's values, aligning with the SDGs attract private sector investors, and quality infrastructure will consider the benefits to the country over the life cycle of the infrastructure. To achieve this, the infrastructure project preparation, development, and delivery should be anchored in economic efficiency, environmental sustainability, disaster resilience, social inclusion, and sound governance. Okay, this graph demonstrates that improved quality of road ranking generally correlates positively with increases in GDP per capita. Taking this as a proxy for transport infrastructure, investment in transport will support sustainable recovery from COVID-19 pandemic. And if done conscientiously, help deliver key priorities, including supporting low carbon transition and thereby helping avert dangerous climate change, contributing to building more resilient economies by reducing the vulnerability of transport infrastructure system to future natural and human-made threats, advancing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And delivering quality infrastructure will require implementing appropriate policy and regulatory frameworks that will provide enabling environment that promotes sustainable infrastructure investment, ensuring strong governance mechanisms so that the right infrastructure gets built in a cost-effective manner with respect to life cycle costs. Taxpayers get value for money. Identifying innovative solutions to mobilize financing to complement public financing, given the profound transport infrastructure gap and the urgency of the investments. And lastly, enhancing capacity of national and subnational governments to invest in quality infrastructure, given their critical role, essential role in delivering significant proportions of the infrastructure. So I hope that transport infrastructure adds to the embetterment of lives of every person that we have in the region, and that it is done correctly or in the most efficient way. Thank you very much. Back to you, Hiro.
Thank you, Cleo. Very dense, but succinctly presenting the huge needs and the gaps among nations. It's actually quite interesting, and then highlighting the importance on the last slide, right? This quality versus GDP per capita. It's quite clear how important it is. And then Yeah, and also key aspects are quality like emission, climate change impacts, more programmatic approach, especially for ADB involving public and private lending, that type of things. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next panelist, Azat, on Azerbaijan railways. Azat, please.
Hi, everybody. Good day. My name is Azat Husseinov, and I'm representing Azerbaijan Railways. I'm a head of strategy and corporate development department. In the context of our discussion, we wish to give an example of Azerbaijan Railways as a good joint project which integrate both elements which we're discussing now, which are transport infrastructure, investment in transport infrastructure, and also activity and also quality management related to the current changes and adaptation to the market needs. And next slide, please. Yes, just a brief introduction about Azerbaijan Railways. We're carrying about 15 million tons of freight per year, 2.1 million passengers. Of course, it's a post-COVID figures. We managed to increase the number of passengers 3 times pre-COVID period in the last 2 years. We're about 17,000 people, and also length of main tracks about 3,000 kilometers, 66% of which are electrified. And we're actually connecting east-west and north-south line with the railways currently. Please, next slide. So if we just briefly go about the railway sector development program, it focuses on the investment in our North Line, or reconstruction of our North Line, as well as conditionalities provided for, institutional conditionalities provided for changing and adaptation of Azerbaijan Railways to the current market needs. So we're focusing mainly, focus of these 45 conditionalities mainly in the 4 main groups: enhanced government and management autonomy, effective financial restructuring, improved financial management, and enhanced operational efficiency. So this is actually, we will go a little deeper into each element, and we'll discuss how the circumstances and how the, let's say, need to improve both infrastructure and the management put us to develop a specific program, and of course the role of ADB in this program, as well as overall results and succession of the elements that we had after the realization of the program. In 2015, we had a big management change and big human change within the railways, which leads to some local changes happening within the railways. And these local changes and improvements and started local reforms created an environment of change within Azerbaijan Railways, as well as significant need of infrastructure investments, which mainly was not done in the last 20 years because of some stagnation and because of dependence in a high level to the oil transportation. So it's a good example of how the country, depending on oil, could just transform itself, and by losing their oil transportation. As you know, in Azerbaijan, the specific elements of pipelines were constructed, and railways lost a huge amount of oil transportation. So we can say that during that period, together with ADB, by the end of 2017, we signed a railway sector development program, which actually was a result of very detailed and careful planning, which helped us to focus on major management related, infrastructure related elements. So all together, we end up with finalizing, and during the next 2 years, we realized 45 elements that helped us to improve our management, restructure our business, introduce a huge amount of systems, and as a result, of it create a holistic approach, focus on our strategy, and let's say detail all the work need to be done centrally and detail it in the level of business plan for each business unit. Please, next slide, please. Yeah. So if we just briefly talk about the major point carried by the railway sector development plan and results, we can say that we had, despite the reconstructing work is still going on, so the project is continuing. We are talking about the introduction of these significant performance management systems, which helped us to establish a new risk management from the scratch. We introduced more modern and asset management systems that create an opportunity to, let's say, manage all these huge infrastructure investments with the government. And as our colleague Cleo say, our country is also in a category that requires a huge amount of infrastructure investments in the next years. So, and this definitely need to be properly managed. Also, of course, we introduced a new KPI system, traffic plan related changes. One of the other very significant point which we have reached is the corporate restructuring in 2 phases, very detailed and careful restructuring process went through the Azerbaijan Railways. And we gathered from scratch a lot of technical departments like infrastructure, like cargo department, and done a lot of points regarding the passenger also. The point like establishing of some new departments, functions like HR, like procurement, like finance, also was ignited by this project. And as a result of all these points that you see here, we came to the conclusion that our strategic view need to be updated. And so we can say that this railway sector development program being a initial strategic document developed together with international financial institutions, and this resulted in overall development of a corporate strategy, which was aligned with our governmental sectoral strategies, and helped us to develop a very detailed business plan on the first level in 2017, and on the second level right now we're updating it. Provide us the opportunity to start discussions about the PSO and SPA, provided us an opportunity to make them track access change related discussions with the government, as well as preparation of new law. So in overall, we can say that we have very significant improvement in Azerbaijan Railways as a result of this so-called railway sector development program, which helped us to develop new teams focused on project management that helped us to transform our vision regarding the realization of the project, transform our vision regarding the changing of the current processes that are going on, and create some more modern look on the job. And specifically, it helps us to improve our image on the public eyes regarding the cargo transportation, regarding the passenger transportation. A huge amount of work done in an investment of passenger transportation. As I said, we had triple the number of passengers, and it's show the requirement and need in this infrastructure. So this amount of passenger stations and the quality of these passenger stations, quality of the service provided significantly increased the amount of, let's say, clients and the amount of market that were actually taken. So this is very briefly about our project. And as I said, this project helped us to create a holistic approach where we bring together the infrastructure management, infrastructure investment, and increasing the, let's say, activity and service related in the region, in the railway business. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Azad. Yeah, it's always a huge challenge to change the institution systems, but definitely one of the core elements of quality infrastructure, because it delivers the physical infrastructure and services, right? And then this Azerbaijan case, actually, everybody's watching actually, because this may provide a good basis to roll out for other countries, maybe facing the same issues. So thank you very much, Azad, again. Yeah. Okay. Now we have the third panelist, Valerie, on the multilateral platform source. Valerie, please.
Thank you very much, Hiro. And thank you for the opportunity to come here. My name is Valerie Pelletier. I'm a structural engineer with a bit under 10 years of experience in infrastructure investments. I've been with the Sustainable Infrastructure Foundation for the past 2 years. Can you please confirm that you see my screen? So the Sustainable Infrastructure Foundation is the vehicle mandated by the multilateral development banks that you can see on this first screen to develop and implement source. So they sit at the Source Council and decides every year of our strategy and finance the developments and use of source as a public good for their member countries. This strategy has allowed us to integrate source in a number of countries where you see in green ongoing integrations and in blue integrations under preparation. So what is an integration? It's a 9 to 12 month capacity building exercise that we do with the Ministry of Finance and PPP unit of a country to adapt, customize the source platform to the institutional framework of the country and the way that it will adapt to the different guidelines and laws of the country, so that the roads that they're developing on the platform, for example, will follow the due process and legal process of said country. It splits across 3 work streams: the policy work stream, so checking that the transfer of data and the share of data between agencies and ministries is okay, and if not, then we set an action plan to modify the laws to allow different agencies to interact better through the platform. The process work stream is the one where we check all the development process steps for different types of projects and set up the parameters to customize the platform, and the IT tool workstream, whereby we interconnect our platform with existing IT tools through our API, so that it will, for example, automatically update the PPP webpage of the PPP unit or of the infrastructure government. So now I'm going to take you directly to the platform. So you have 3 types of users: multilateral development banks, government users, and international organizations such as GIZ or MCC. Here we are going to use a real environment that we've developed for Uzbekistan that we've integrated. And within that environment, we've created a number of projects for presentation purposes and training purposes. Obviously, we do not have access to the data that is created by the governments, and we cannot see it or extract it. So the login page is easy. It's an email address and a password that's generated by source. When you log into the platform, here under the name of Pasak Yazanov from the Ministry of Finance of Uzbekistan, you see his pipeline of projects, so the projects he has created or he was invited to participate on, but he can also see the projects of the Ministry of Finance to follow the pipeline of the ministry and contact directly colleagues to be involved in projects that are of interest to him or to his work. We have this panel to follow SDGs and guidance. We were talking about SDG 11 earlier. This panel will allow the country to see how aligned they are with the Sustainable Development goals. Here you have a dashboard that is dynamic, so you can follow sectors and subsectors. And I'm going to take you through the process quickly of how Pasak Azanov is going to create a project, invite his team on it, and share information. So here you can set all the parameters with the sector and subsector. For transports, we have a number of subsector, a dozen of subsectors, including river ferries, highways, airports, dry ports, tunnels, highways. And once you've set the global capex of the project and a quick description, you can then create the project. Once you enter in the project, you can see the ID card, so the quick description that you provided. It's progress against two axes. The process-driven one, the one we talked about at the presentation, earlier presentation, where I was saying that we adapted to the institutional framework of the country. So where you have the different phases of the life cycle of the project that have been designed by the PPP unit or the infrastructure minister of the country where source was integrated. And the second axis, which is content-driven, which we call the stages, which is basically a set of questions with closed lists and multiple choices. Now, we limit the data and the possibility for free text to a minimum for several reasons. The first one is that this allows us to translate to any language that sources integrated country of for multiple national teams to work together. It allows us to extract data for the dashboards and give guidance to the different teams. So a team can select at the entrance a sector or subsector and narrow it down to observe the upcoming tasks and who is responsible for them, so they can see where the bottlenecks lie. Now, these questions are standardized. They're the same questions that we have for every country we integrate source in. This is the result of a process that we've carried on with the private sector and international institutions. They can see here on the slide with over 7,000 comments. This provides several things: a transparent environment to follow the processes and tasks that are aligned with international standards and the local legislation. It allows as well to assess the project against different labels. So here you have the Fast Infra label, the GRIS that we've developed with, that has been developed with by the Asian Development Bank, and that we've integrated in source, mapping them against different questions of source. We can assess the quality of risk allocation against international standards and check the consistency of the answers that were provided to the different questions throughout the different stages of the team's change. You can leave comments, documents. So it's a transparent environment where teams can work together from different agencies and allocate different tasks to external consultants and log on data with sector and subsector specific questions of over 1,500 data points. Then the project owner is able to publish their data and share their contacts on the source pipeline for international investors or industrials. There are other functions such as document repository and project management tools that are quite close to the Microsoft ones. I'm not going to get into too much detail in because they're not really specific to source. Now, that's all for Sustainable Infrastructure Foundation team. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, under this limited time constraint. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Valerie. Yeah, we all know more and better that it is essential and efficient to utilize the e-system for sure. The majority of use of source seems on relating to PPP activities, and I found some use for e-procurement. So these show somehow the system also help enhance governance on top of efficiency. It's another key element of quality infrastructure, I believe. Thank you very much again, Valerie.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, the next panelist, Patrick, on carbon neutrality in the road sector. Patrick, please.
Thank you very much, Hiro, and thank you to the Asian Development Bank for the opportunity to speak today in this panel. And sorry, Valerie, for sharing my screen a few seconds too early. So my name is Patrick Malejak. I'm the Secretary General of PIARC, and I'll start by introducing us very shortly. We are the new name of the World Road Association. Maybe you know us better under that name, and we were founded more than 100 years ago as a non-profit, non-political association. Our lead members are governments from all over the globe. Currently, we have 125 governments as members, including most countries in Asia. Let me highlight that we place high-income countries and lower-income countries on equal footing, and we have a number of measures to support lower-income economies in their involvement in our activities. We also include private sector companies, universities, individuals even as members. Our mission is to exchange knowledge, policy, best practice on all matters that are related to roads and road transport. I will share a couple of examples in my next slide. The way we do that is we volunteer networks of experts from all over the globe. Currently, we have more than 1,000 experts volunteering their time from more than 80 countries. What we do is we convene groups of experts. We publish technical reports. We organize seminars and congresses. You may have heard of our world congresses. These are just snapshots of some recent reports we've published. I will not go into the details of any of those, just mentioning that we have reports on pavements, on tunnels, and that over a 4-year period, which is our way of working, we publish on average 50 reports. So I just want to point out that if anyone in the audience would like to know about recent developments in tunnels or pavements or bridges or planning or ITS, those are good introductions and sometimes detailed introductions to some really key topics that have been identified as topical by road administrations across the globe. So, and they are free to access. The way we work, as I was saying,
can you talk a bit louder? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I will. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, Hiro. The way we work is through a plan of activities that cover a 4-year span. And back to the topic at hand, quality infrastructure investments. Well, quality infrastructure to begin with. All these topics that we tackle with our experts, we aim at identifying best practice, and the way we do that, and the reason we do that is that it's cost effective. We have feedback from our members that say that at some point in time, they were facing an issue, they were unsure about how to handle a particular topic or a new technology that was emerging, and they were able to tap our network to get a very quick introduction to these topics and access a network of experts who could then help them navigate a particular field. And this is really time-saving and very inexpensive. And of course, then next steps is to get into the detailed planning analysis, which is not something we do, of course. So as you can see, we address climate change and resilience of road networks on the left side on the screen, as well as resilience infrastructure. We are really focused on making sure road infrastructure and road transport services are as much as possible equipped to face the next 50 years. Why roads, you may wonder? Well, roads currently represent about 80% of all inland transport in most countries, and roads are likely to remain a major component of the transport mix. Of course, in many cases, other modes of transport are very relevant and have qualities that roads do not have. But roads, I would say, are key for equity, inclusivity, and accessibility, and for reaching most sustainable development goals. If you want a small village to reach a school that is in the next village, you probably would need a road to do that. And what goes for schools also works for hospitals and other essential facilities. Roads are also everywhere. It's something to keep in mind for active modes like walking, for car sharing. Uber is only one of those companies. Public transport systems like buses, and buses need roads and alternative fuels, and I will get back to that a bit later. And roads investments and road maintenance are also a really great way of building jobs, which is a different priority, but something to be kept in mind as well. So back to the topic, carbon neutrality. I think we really have to develop a multi-dimensional approach. There are many ways to tackle the issue that we all share. So the first one is to plan carefully, plan your network, your road infrastructure, your transport services in a way that is integrated, that's really well designed. You also have to manage road traffic better with measures including intelligent transport systems, but not only, because this reduces congestion and this reduces greenhouse gas emissions. You have to maintain your road assets efficiently. Vehicles that drive on well-maintained assets emit less CO2. It's as simple as that. You have to consider and support new propulsion techniques, electricity, hydrogen, and consider the many types of traffic that use roads, trucks, two-wheelers, etc. I will share now a number of reports and that have been published at PIARC, and that are just examples of what can be done and should be considered by all road operators and infrastructure managers. The first one relates to energy positive roads. In this report in 2019, we analyzed the potential for generating energy, renewable energy, in the right of way, in the road envelope itself. And we analyzed the cost-benefit analysis of these approaches and their technological readiness level, of course. Why do we do that? Because road authorities always need energy. And there are different ways of developing that energy and addressing those energy requirements, including solar pavements, solar barriers, wind generation, geothermic energy production, all within the road envelope. So this report, I guess, is interesting for many road operators. It's very relevant in general, especially when thinking about roads in remote locations in larger countries, or when it's just cost prohibitive to connect to the grid. Another report we've published a couple of years ago relates to electric road systems. We all familiar with electric vehicles, and if you look at heavy goods vehicles, batteries can just be too large for those vehicles in many cases. This is why it's important to look at how to facilitate their connections to a type of grid. Then you would have trucks connected to the wider grid. There are three types of technology inductive, wireless, conductive, and also by rail and conductive overhead. In this report, we present a state-of-the-art review and stakeholder engagement, as well as a detailed feasibility assessment. And this is very important, the business model for electric road systems uptake, because there are a lot of partners to be involved, including infrastructure owners and managers. We also include in this report a review of stationary charging and other alternatives, broadly speaking, to fossil fuel propulsion technologies. I think this report is very valid in many countries, especially, let me say this, high-income countries. But to further the analysis, we have now set up a task force that continues developing research on how those electric road systems can be implemented and developed in all countries across the globe. And you're very welcome to join that if you want. Recently, we published a report on well-prepared projects, and the source system that Valérie presented is one really good example of this, because good project preparation tends to deliver better outcomes and benefits to users, and also to deliver better performance as regards budget, delays, and quality of projects. So we need to identify, develop, and promote ways to prepare projects really well. So in this report that was 2 years in the making, we present various processes that have been put in place in about 10 countries to deliver projects that are really well prepared. And we have been able to identify good practices in countries at different income levels. So it's not only for high income countries or low income countries, it's for every type of country. And I really encourage everyone to consult this report from our website. And we're now continuing this work with a focus on low and middle income countries, with input from the ADB and multilateral development banks in general, because this is really key, as we have seen with the source project, also software. Last but not least, it's essential to manage and to plan roads the best way possible. This is really essential. And there are great tools, and notably HDM4. I'm sure many of you in the audience are familiar with this. HDM4 is regularly used in decisions over the funding of infrastructure projects by MDBs as well as governments. Same remark as always, low income, middle income, as well as high income economies. We have examples from all over the world. Currently, it's used to analyze transport corridors in South America, roads wash out during rainy seasons in Asia. It's been used to analyze investment strategies in Australia and Queensland, in the UK for local roads, for national highways in India. There are many, many examples, and we have thousands of users across the globe. It's now under active development to make sure that the software includes priorities such as the SDGs in general, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and road safety, among others. And the partners which are involved in this active development now count the World Bank, the UK's FCDO, the ADB, of course, the Asian Development Bank, PIARC, and other key stakeholders, just to make sure that the model remains fit for purpose in 2022 and onwards. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patrick. Yeah, it is nicely reminded that roads do not necessarily only for motor vehicles, but variety of users there. Yeah, and then also interesting is a concept like positive energy roads and the e-road systems. And then of course for ADB also HDM4 is an important tool for road projects. Actually both for CAPEX side, investment side, and also the operation maintenance, definitely. Yeah, it could be utilized on the whole life cycle, yeah, which is also the key element of the quality infrastructure. Yeah, thank you very much again. Yeah,
thank you.
Okay, now the final panelist, Mohanty, on IT 2030 declaration. Mohanty, please.
Thank you, Mr. Yamaguchi. First of all, our deep appreciation to ADB for inviting UNCRD, the Division for Sustainable Development Goals of UNDESA, to this important forum. I am basically talking about the Aichi Declaration for achieving universally accessible, safe, affordable, efficient, resilient, clean, and low carbon passenger and the freight transport in Asia. It is clear, the next slide, please. It is clear from the transport issues and challenges that we have discussed so far over the last 3 days, without bringing transformational changes in the transport, Asia's transport sector, it is not possible to realize the interlinked and mutually reinforcing international agendas and agreements such as SDGs, the Paris, the New Urban Agenda, Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, Nairobi Mandate, Addis Ababa Action Agenda, and also the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Keeping in mind this overarching objective, the member countries of the Regional EST Forum in Asia, the 25 member countries, they agreed the Aichi Declaration at the 14th Regional EST Forum in Asia that was held in Nagoya, Aichi last year, hosted by the government of Japan. And this is in fact a significant milestone in the 18-year history of the Regional EST Forum in Asia, which invites multiple line ministries, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Urban Development, Ministry of Railways, Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Health as well, to policy dialogue on multi-sectoral transport, environment, climate, health, and other cross-cutting issues. Aligned with SDGs and the Paris Agreement, among others, the Aichi Declaration with its 6 dedicated goals aims to place in Asia in the forefront of the new collaborative approaches to bring transformational changes in the transport sector. When I say transformational changes in terms of policy, institutions, technological interventions, and also the infrastructure development, the interest of the session today. The declaration not only aims to serve as a good catalyst towards improving the global reporting on transport, SDG, and climate change, but also aims to provide policy insights to achieve greater synergies in all our efforts on sustainable transport, leading to these international agendas and agreement. I am not going to read all this, the goals of the declaration. There are 6 goals. I have actually shared in the chat box the full declaration. Next. Next slide, please. The infrastructure development and the Aichi 2030 declaration. If we look at the objectives of the 6 goals of the Aichi declarations, the needs, the infrastructure needs and demands are actually huge. The challenge is how far Asian countries have been able to integrate climate and environmental sustainability, biodiversity conservation and ecosystem restoration, resilience, safety, food security, poverty eradication into their transport policy planning and development, including the transport infrastructure development. When we address, for instance, the quality infrastructure transport, quality transport infrastructure in the context of resilience of cities and communities, which is Aichi goal number 1B, we need to consider not only the climate change, increasing frequency and magnitude of the natural disasters, but also the ongoing health emergencies, the pandemics like COVID-19, that calls for dedicated infrastructure with specific provisions supporting telecommuting, digital connectivity, mobility through walking and bicycling, and also prevention of spreading of infection. So these are the new needs that we need to cope up with. Similarly, if you look into the Aichi goal number 1B, which is about resilience, that calls for infrastructure needs in the area of efficient public transport and mass rapid transit systems, e-vehicles, shifting to more fuel-efficient vehicles, shared mobility, compact cities, spatial and land use planning, like smart growth, transit-oriented development, dedicated walking and bicycle lanes, and multimodal integration. That is what Aichi Goal 1A and 1C about environmental sustainability and how we minimize the air pollution that calls for. Similarly, if you look at the Aichi Goal number 2, that is around road safety, which calls for appropriate road geometry, engineering and design, dedicated cycling and walkways, crossings, provision for seamless mobility of transport-sensitive groups, children, women, old, physically challenged people, and also the emergency services, including fast aid facilities. If we look into the last 3 goals, which is around accessibility, the rural access, urban access, and national access and connectivity, which are central to achieving the SDGs. But in relation to Aichi goal number 4 on rural access, for example, the ATO data, the Asian Transport Outlook data says 680 million people do not meet SDG 9.1.1. That is the proportion of rural people who live within 2 kilometers of an all-season road. So fast mile connectivity and also the last mile connectivity, also an acute problem in the rural areas of many developing countries. So how can necessary investment be mobilized in the rural transport sector? Who will be financing the rural transport sector? And what are the enabling conditions to attract investment for this neglected rural transport sector, which is in fact our food bowl? If we look into the Aichi goal number 5, for example, urban access, 1.3 billion people do not meet the SDG 11.2 that aims to provide access to safe, affordable, accessible, sustainable transport system for all. So in summary, countries' political will and financing decisions towards clean and green infrastructure would allow Asia to meet SDG 3.9 to substantially reduce the number of deaths and illness from pollution, and also SDG 13 on climate action, among others. So annually, the Regional EST Forum will discuss resource mobilization to meet these infrastructure gaps with regard to the Aichi goals. Next slide, please. Yes. So this is about the implementation of the declaration. The goals of the Aichi declaration can be achieved through a combination of multiple strategies. And you can see here, I'm not going through all these strategies. You can see in the declaration. These strategies are based on basically the avoid, shift, and improve approach, and including a number of cross-cutting strategies. Each EST member country will make their own choice and implement these strategies that are most relevant to their specific national context and circumstances. For example, the small island developing states, SIDS, would prioritize perhaps the maritime transport over the road-based transport. Similarly, the landlocked countries could put greater emphasis on the regional connectivity in choosing an appropriate combination of strategies. The countries will also take account of what is holding back the scaling up of sustainable transport in their country. Next slide, please. Next, yes. The implementation is also driven through communities of interest to guide and support the implementation of the Aichi declaration. Its supporters, development community, private sector, the civil society, scientific and research community agree to develop better coordination in support of the declaration by setting up communities of interest. And these communities of interest around each Aichi goal can help ensure knowledge sharing, create best practice examples, developing and implementing capacity building programs, reaching out to bilateral, multilateral development community donors in aligning their development assistance in transport with the objectives of the Aichi declaration. Next. So this is about the tracking of the Aichi declaration, which is mainly done through the ATO process of the Asian Development Bank. There is a quite interesting and meaningful partnership that has emerged between UNCID and ADB, which is translated into a strong complementary relationship between the Aichi 2030 declaration and the whole ATO process. And tracking the implementation of the Aichi declaration will be based on a set of agreed indicators. You can refer to Annex 2 of the declaration that I have shared in the chat box, which are in line with the agreed upon SDG indicators, mainly SDG Tier 1 and Tier 2 indicators. And the data for reporting on indicators will be sourced from the Asian Transport Outlook, which will serve as a reference for tracking implementation of the declaration. ATO provides a baseline support as an indicative benchmark for the Aichi declaration with country data in its annex. You can also see I have shared in the chat box as a reference on regional status or trends of sustainable transport development aligned with the 6 goals of the Aichi declaration and the objective of SDG and also the Paris Agreement, among others. ATO also will provide annual status update reports for 6 goals with country level supporting. EST member countries will be reporting every year at the annual EST forum their annual progress report in line with the standardized country reporting. ADB and UNCD, we are now currently discussing to come up with a number of capacity building training workshops for the countries. The information provided through the country reports by the member countries will be combined with relevant policy information collected through the ATO, and ATO will support tracking of national policies, institutional arrangement, and also, most importantly, the funding in support of the goals of the declaration. So finally, overall, the ATO's robust set of data indicators, which I understand is more than 500 data and indicators in various transport areas such as infrastructure, transport activity, services, access, connectivity, road safety, air pollution, health, climate change, socioeconomic, transport policy, and a number of miscellaneous cross-cutting areas will strengthen the knowledge base around each goals of the Aichi declaration. This is how we have envisaged with regard to implementation tracking of the Aichi declaration. Thank you, Mr. Yamaguchi.
Okay, great. Great. Thank you very much, Mohanty. Yeah, it's really comprehensively listed out key quality aspects for transport sector development, sector-wise and cross-cutting wise. Yeah, it's definitely a bit limited time, but quite nicely, succinctly presented. Thank you very much. Yeah. Also appreciate showing the link to our ADB ATO and then working together. Thank you. Okay, now all the presentation panelists done. Thank you very much to share ideas and activities. For audience, again, please send your question comments through the Zoom Q&A. So while waiting, I'd like to throw a few questions or one question for panelists. I guess first one would be Azad Railway. A study by ADB often shows that other countries in the region also facing the same challenges with the railway sector. So drawing from your experience so far, what lessons can you share from the ongoing railway sector reforms in Azerbaijan? Azad?
Thank you. The major point is being able to let's say carefully prepare yourself for adaptation to the market needs, and try to because the post-Soviet Union railways are usually kind of work in a condition where all the planned economy and everything is kind of designed by the railways, not by the market. So this is a major point where all this preparation and detailed work plans need to be designed for. So this will increase the efficiency of work done and create more proper focus, because all we need right now is to compete with existing source of logistics, transportation. And in past, we didn't have much more competition and we didn't care about competition too much. I'm talking about all these post-Soviet Union countries, let's say. But for now, it's different, and many players need to understand this. Another point is maybe the project management focus, which also we lack because of our historical development. So the project management focus on change on the current processes, focus to change the processes as are going on to make them more efficient. So this is a very important point that need to be taken account with the countries. Of course, the teams, people are crucial here. We need to understand that people are engaged, should be purely focused on the changes, should be purely focused on the projects, and maybe segregated from major processes, but at the same time have to be backed up with the proper technical assistance, internal and external. And we should be able to bring them together in order to design solutions specifically for their own railways. Because not always the best practices work, not always the internal experts can provide best practice leaded solutions.
Okay, yeah, great, yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, we already received increasing questions, so we pick up a few. Sorry, I just pick up here and there, so my eyes are moving around. So for Cleo, interesting questions from the audience. private sector investment is possible in urban and highly populated areas, most likely because of demand, right? How do we make private sector investments in transport feasible in the rural areas where, as you say, access is still low?
Yeah. So I think we've discussed this many times here.
Yeah.
And well, tell the truth, for me, private sector investment is not the panacea for all projects. I think there are projects that are fit for private sector investment, or there are projects that are better done, better value for money done through the public sector. We can make all fangled sorts of structures for rural roads to make it investable, but I don't think the risk reward or value for money would be there. It would be a much more expensive adventure for the government to do it through private sector. So what I would propose, and that was the answer I had on the chat, was to say that let's get all the projects that are suited for private sector invested by the private sector. So those projects that are done better by the public sector there's budget room made for that, rather than trying to fit, private sector investment into every single form, which frankly ends up being a bit of a waste of money.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's always a challenging question. And then, yeah, definitely we explore about how is always challenge. Yes, thank you. Oh, okay, so another question. This is related to roads. So maybe Patrick, question. Since road safety is an important component of quality infrastructure, why do so few investment projects include a comprehensive road safety component?
Well, that's sorry.
Question to ADB.
Yeah, this is what I was going to say. This is indeed a very relevant question. In the road sector, and we are speaking more from the experts' side, this is also something that we do regret, that road safety, which is a major source of casualties across the globe, is not more taken into account into project planning. I think the source software and all the methods go a long way towards making sure this is compensated and that road safety is indeed now taken into account. But something that I would encourage is for project funders and financiers, public or private, to do request road safety assessments and what we call road safety audits in particular, before funding any project. We need to continue pressing for recognition of this very important issue across the globe. And we have initiatives at the United Nations level in particular that contribute to this. There are methods. There are indeed lots of methods that can help with the analysis of road projects before they are confirmed, and that help identify road safety issues before roads are even built. We just need to make sure that those practices and methodologies are put into use. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I guess maybe this may be raised to me or ADB. So I guess ADB projects, road projects, we definitely always include the road safety component. I think the question is why not more comprehensively or holistically approach on that? I agree. The thing is actually maybe one side is the road safety challenges are huge. So what we do is actually when we do the road projects, it ended up like kind of ad hoc hodgepodge way type of way. Although we try to have a more holistic overall component, comprehensive approaches there. And then each project try to address those bigger picture. But at the same time, I fully agree that we better explore also those more programmatic approach, like a Cleo initial opening panel say. So now ADB also, some countries, we are having dialogue to explore the more result-oriented approach. So result-based lending, etc., type of mobility to address that way. So we'll see how it goes there. Okay, yeah, it's a good question, difficult answers for us. Yeah. So any other questions not there? So maybe Patrick. So again, maybe lots of panelists may be thinking on this Glasgow's COP discussion there, and then quite climate change discussions. So our question is this way. So the road sector is a significant source for greenhouse gas emissions. Should we stop building new roads?
Of course, we should stop completely. No, no, that's a joke. As Mohanty has presented, there's still a lack of roads in Asia and across the globe. Roads are just easier to build in many cases, and there are still many areas where roads are needed, and new roads in particular, to help move goods to people and also to help move people to hospitals, schools, and factories. This is just where we are. But we need to design, plan, and build those roads efficiently. I would say that this requires planning at an integrated level. We should really make sure that roads that are built are going to be maintained in the future, and also that they are going to be fully integrated in the network system. That's one. The other element is that when we build roads, we need to make sure that we use the proper technologies. And I mentioned earlier, for example, there are different technologies that use recycled materials for roads. Roads can be planned so that they would help access electricity for vehicles that need electricity. And all these technologies, approaches need to be taken into account comprehensively. So of course, roads are not the only solution. And in many cases, in trains for freight or for passengers is a better answer. But in some other cases, you do need roads, even for electric buses, for example. So the answer is, of course, not very straightforward, but it's essential to keep all SDGs into account when planning and building roads. And this would really help make sure that we reach greenhouse gas emissions reductions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Actually, again, as you pointed out, users are not necessarily motor vehicles only. That's one thing. And also, by having roads, actually maybe offset the emission by decongesting the situation, etc. So even those monitoring scheme is a bit needs to establish. We are thinking actually. So working with the government. But the important thing actually on this COP26 Glasgow discussion is definitely that we all are requiring to broaden the discussion with the government, how we consider the climate change aspects in thinking of the road projects. That's actually the good message, at least, and then we have to be careful on that part. Actually, we started the country programming discussions, and then I have to say to the client country almost 100 times on the climate change. So I'm sure they feel like too much, but that's exactly what we require to pass through. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Another question. Oh, this one is still for Valerie, I guess. Hang on. So Valerie. Okay. Okay. I'm impressed by the source platform. Really amazing. So how many decarbonizing transport projects managed to get funded through this source platform? Total number of projects and their total cumulative value? Is there any figures? Yeah.
So I answered directly on the link with the link to the source pipeline, where you have for each project its structure, its substructure, its description. If it's been labeled against, if it's been assessed against the GRIS label, then a summary of that assessment. Same thing for Fast Infra. I can't give from the top of my head the number of projects that in source that are related to decarbonization transport projects, but I can ask the IT development team and to extract anonymized data from the platform and share that.
Yeah. Instead, I think then relating to that, maybe then in broader way, so what role do you think such digital solutions play in closing this big gap of infrastructure in transport and other sectors? How do you think this source help to narrow this gap?
So because it's an interagency platform and it's a transparent one, as you saw in the project, you can filter the ministry's pipeline, for example, and see the upcoming tasks and the developments of the different projects that the ministry is overseeing. So you can directly spot before a meeting that you're entering, you can filter and print automated reports, and you can directly spot the bottlenecks in your pipeline. And you can relate them to, with quantitative data and objective information, you can relate them to types of contracts and structures that have been put in place for these particular projects. We discussed earlier that some projects were not as well defined and good for public-private partnerships. Typically, a source will give you data to back a point of view on contractual arrangements for different types of projects, and those that go forward and those that are stuck.
Okay, yeah, great, thank you. Okay, so while waiting, so maybe I go with the Mohanty. Okay, so the IT declaration sets out very ambitious 2030 goals on climate mitigation and resilience, air pollution, road safety, access and connectivity, etc. Yeah. So these goals are really achievable, and what is the plan for implementing the declaration? Mr. Mohanty, muted.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for the question. Yes, these are certainly ambitious goals, and an important step in the implementation of the declaration is to translate the goals of the international and local policies, strategies, targets, and projects. And this requires strong political will, necessary institutional arrangement, and dedicated funding at national level. That is the first and foremost important aspect of the declaration. And the goals of the IT declaration can be achieved through a combination of multiple strategies. I was presenting a number of strategies around avoid, shift, and improved. And each member country needs to make a choice and implement those strategies that are most relevant to their specific national context and economic situation. And implementation of the IT declaration also needs to be led by the national and local governments and supported by all proponents. I was talking about the communities of interest around the goals of the declaration. And at government level, it will require coordination across line ministries, horizontal cooperation, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Transport, when we talk about resilience, when we talk about climate mitigation. I think there is a systematic horizontal cooperation necessary between the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Energy, etc. And also the vertical cooperation between the cities and the national the governments. For example, you see I will give the example of India. To implement the smart cities program of the government of India, there is a systematic vertical cooperation between the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and also the city governments. And these cooperations are usually facilitated by annual regional EST forum in Asia. As I mentioned in my presentation, purposefully, we bring multiple line ministries to this EST forum. It is not just the transport ministry, Minister of Environment, Minister of Transport, Minister of Urban Development, and also the Minister of Rural Development, keeping in mind a substantial number of goals is around also accessibility, and our rural area is with acute shortage of the connectivity. The other part of the declaration is of course tracking, and as I was mentioning in my presentation, already mentioned about the ATO that provides a significant basis for tracking this declaration, and the bilateral and multilateral development finance organizations are also very important to play a role to support the national and local governments in the transport sector, specifically the implementation of all these goals. The communities of interest, the UNCRD as a secretariat of the Regional EST Forum will be facilitating the communities of interest, and their activities will also be coordinated through the setup of the Asian Transport Outlook. This is how we converge this, this UNCRD EST process and ADB's ATO process, starting from the benchmarking of the goals to implementation to tracking the national policies, institutions, and the funding mechanisms done through a very collaborative way. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so not much in the board. So maybe back to again, then Azad, back to railway. It may relate to also service standard, etc. So maybe also relates to quality. So I have a question. The railway market share in Azerbaijan are steadily declining. Actually, this is every year we notice. So what are key reasons for this? And then any actions taken by the government to those issues? I think this also provides ideas for other countries. Yeah, and it may relate to some quality aspects. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, as I mentioned very briefly, in Azerbaijan about during the years 2007-2010, we have finalized the construction of the pipeline, and Azerbaijan Railways lost a huge amount of oil transportation to the pipeline, so that it's calculated about more than 1/3 of the transportation, as well as I said, also regarding the problems with the market orientation and reliability of and a significant high quality increase in the road business. So created a new competitor for the railways, which in past was not seen as a major competitor. So the road business take over a huge amount of transportation as well. So we can say that we lost in this 15 to 20 years period about the half of our market to the road business and to the pipeline. So this is one major stuff. Of course, there was another smaller decreases, but if we come back to what is government response to this and how we are actually changing and adapting to this situation, all I've mentioned in our presentation, all that changes actually the part of it, but the major portion, we can say that the government are mainly focused on the transit organization, international organization like TMTM, a middle corridor, like partnerships with two-side partnership with corridor participants, and also try to strategically approach all the let's say technical problems, infrastructural, rolling stock related problems that we face in order to increase the speed, increase the quality that we are of the services that we are providing, increase the amount of services that are provided on the territory of Azerbaijan. We have built specific stations, dry port stations that increase the opportunity to make, let's say, cross-continental travels, as well as we are aware of Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan, a huge investment was done in order to finally link the east and west side, so that today we can talk about the transportation between other countries. On the other side, corporate side of the business, government significantly increased the corporate governance and created the new modern style of management related to corporate, all the supervisory board, all the committees, renewed the approach with newer standards, and try to make sure that all the elements that are engaged in the transportation and all the elements that help us to increase our or maintain our market share are provided by this, let's say, points that I've mentioned.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that's all the similar situation. Especially, I think Central West countries are facing the similar situation. I guess it's a gas pipeline or etc. So that actually definitely reduce the demands, etc. Okay, so all right. I think I myself also have several questions to like to raise, but it's now time, and then also we have now come to the end of the session. A big thank you to all our speakers today, and especially to you, the audience, for joining this session and actively participating. Yeah, there are many interesting questions and challenging questions. An important takeaway from this session is that immediate action is required to scale up investments, accelerate some digitization, strengthen governance, improve infrastructure management, but also tackling the externality effects associated with the road sector, transport sector, sorry. So in the past 2 years, you may have joined or found the discussions on Build Back Better, right? So this eventually centered around the green, resilient, inclusive recovery with massive needs of investment. Hope today's discussions deepened or broadened your thoughts and practice on this. So please join us again for the closing session for the Asia Pacific Transport Forum, which will start in the next 30 minutes. Thank you. Thank you very much.